I don't know what went on there. Um, on my end, suddenly it went click and a screen popped up. And the screen talking about YouTube, you got to send them their feed and you're not sending a feed and blah, blah, blah. All of this stuff. And it was asking all kinds of questions. I have no clue. So I tried, kept rebooting and everything. And finally I got back to it. I don't know what happened there, guys. I hope y'all get to change over to here. Hey, Elijah. I will send that to him and say, okay. Woo! Hi there. I don't know what happened, guys. I mean, literally all at once it just went, and I thought, it said I lost internet connection. Okay, we got a storm right here at me. And then suddenly the screen went completely different, and it was a completely different program I was looking at. And every time I tried to bring it up, it circled me right back to that program, and it's telling me all kinds of technical questions that I don't know. So like, they better not have updated this thing and eliminated the program that I've been using for a new program. I will get ticked about that. Whew. But I'm back. Okay. Yeah, in case of blackout, do not rely on technology. Well, thank you very much, Elijah. Yeah, I'm one of them that I'm just down to earth human. Yeah, 2020. They managed to shut down Blackie. Yeah, they could if they wanted to. But anyway, know what it is. We got, with the weather pattern we're having, clear everything, and then this cell will just appear out of nowhere. There's so much energy, the flow from the Gulf and everything. Literally, you will have clear skies, not a twinkle of nothing. And 30 minutes later, they're telling on the radio, major tornadoes and etc. It just blows up like a cloud of smoke, and suddenly you got a major cell right on top of you. So it was right about 5 miles, 10 miles from me just a few minutes ago, but it's going away from me now. So hopefully. Bushcraft with the Preacher, good evening. Tony York, good evening. Randy, good evening. Bears in the house. Wicked Viking, hello, hello. Yeah, I just got back from Pathfinder, and it was a very good trip up there. Had a really good time. Me and Trinity Sainer set up there. It's actually her shop. I'm just working for her. And sold quite a few bags, sold quite a few things up there. She had she won on the relay team on Saturday night, the Challenger. And for those of you that have never been to a Pathfinder gathering, what they do is on Saturday night, Dave will have these challenges. And he comes up with some colorful ones. And Trinity has always competed, whether it was dive into the swamp, swim across the far side, gather up, build a fire, and then swim back across carrying the fire through the swamp, something like that. Well, this time he told them to divide up into 3-man teams. And it was so Trinity, who's a little lady, and these two big 200-pound guys. And then they went over there in different groups. And they went over there and they gave them 2 poles and a blanket, and you had to make a improvised stretcher. 2 of them would carry, one gets on the stretcher. They were going to run 50 yards, set them down, open up one of them big old construction trash bags. One of the others had to get on the bag, and then 2 of them drag them back. So it was 50 yards out on the stretcher, 50 yards back being drug on that trash bag. And then one of them went out there about 15, 20 yards and got on their knees and put their arms up like they're out in water. And you had to tie a square knot to join 2 lines together, and then coil up the line and throw it to them like you're throwing it to somebody out in the water rescue. And they had to tie a bowline around themselves. That was it. Well, the other team was like 3 minutes and some odd is what, that. And then whenever Trinity's team got up there, Trinity chose to tote the stretcher. This 200-pound guy is on the stretcher, and little bitty Trinity is holding the end of the thing, running, toting the guy. And they did the 50 yards. Then she got on the trash bag and they pulled her back. Then she threw the rope and the guy caught it. And it was 1 minute, 35 seconds. They beat the dog out of everybody else. So I was really tickled to see her at that. So it was a real fun, challenging, enjoyable weekend. Randy, afternoon. Okay, let's see. Squib, knock it. Blackie, I recently received the prototype kukri that you were testing a few years ago. It still has your soft shackles for attaching to a belt. Did you ever finalize the design? What that was is William Collins made that machete, and he made that sheath. And he wanted it to be horizontal instead of vertical. Well, the problem with little Blackie ain't that big. And so when you put that big kukri on me horizontal, it's that long. It looked like a short sword sticking straight out in the front and out the back. And I removed that loop and put that soft shackle so I could hang it vertically and hook it to my leg to carry it. But it's a very good kukri, but it was made by William Collins, and that was a $500 and something kukri. That's a lot of work and a lot of steel, and that field modification was just me. He makes a really good sheath, but he wanted it to carry it horizontally, and I just don't carry a machete that way. I want to carry a kukri. I want to carry it vertically, and so I just put that soft shackle on there to put it that way. That's why it's got that modification on it. Elvin, good evening. Ooh, Edmund, you have 78 up there. Like I was saying, at Pathfinder, it was 49 on Saturday morning. It got pretty warm during the day. You'd sweat a little bit, but at night, temperatures dropped like a rock, and it was down at the 50s at night. You would see your breath, which was just awesome. Brett, Blackie, I have an aluminum canteen that I want to fill and keep in my truck for the duration of the summer, but I'm wary of causing corrosion, either by long-term storage or chlorinated water. I can understand that. Now, what I would do is I would salt scrub the canteen first, put salt water into it, fairly heavy, swirl it around, and let that kind of scrub the inside. Rinse it out really good to clean it out. And then fill it slam to the top. Don't leave any airspace in it. And cap it off. And that's where I would carry. That's why I carry one in the summer, because it doesn't allow airspace. There's no extra oxygen, so any kind of mold or whatever that might be present in the water doesn't have anything to work with, and it'll keep the water safe for longer. And just mark on the calendar once a month, dump it and refill it, and you shouldn't have any trouble with that. And aluminum should be fine. Aluminum's problem is when we need oxidation. Raw aluminum is a little bit toxic, but once you expose it to air for just a little bit, it forms a skim over it, and that makes it safe to use. So that's the reason the U.S. military used aluminum canteens for so long, was because of that. So it should be fine as long as you fill it all the way to the top, so no way nothing can get going in it. Tiny Titan, yeah, y'all are going to get warm up in that neck of the woods. I was seeing way up into Canada heat. Yeah, that's the one thing, Wicked Viking. Plan on once a month dumping that water out and refilling it. That's what I do with all my canteens. I keep my canteens full in my hang up, and I always dump them and refill them. Especially if it's been up there and I'm not sure how long, I always dump it, give it a good shake, fill it up before I take it camping. I don't use that water. Cool. Up there in Ohio, 64. Awesome. Anthony, glad to meet you. excuse me, I don't remember your face right off the top of my head. I did see so many people, but I'm always tickled to meet people, especially people who follow the channel or whatever. It's always great to do. Oh, cool. The using the M40 to do sassafras. That's good. Best way to fix a Pieta 1858 loading lever retainer. Has it popped out? If it's popped out, you can if it's just a little loose and wants to slide out the sides, take you a soda can and cut you out a little bit of shim and put it under there and then tap back in and see if that adds enough tension to hold it. If not, you can put just a drop of epoxy up there. I would not use JB Weld. I would use one of the other epoxies to hold that. If it's something that the thing is just wallowed out and it's not holding it anymore, then you're going to have to JB Weld it and just realize that you're going to have a tough time getting back off there if you ever have to. But put tape all the way around it, rough up both sides, put a little bit of JB Weld on it, put it in place, and then once you got it in place, put a little bit of pressure on it, like a C-clamp or something, just to hold it straight down in position. That way you can wipe off any excess and let it sit there for 24 hours and try it. That should handle it. If it doesn't, the next step up would be find a jeweler in your area and see if they will silver solder it for you. Usually jewelers do that all the time. They do silver soldering all the time. And so getting something like that done is relatively easy. I've had to do that on a 51 Navy before, where that front thing just was loose when I got it. And it would just always come out. But I was lucky to find it every time it fell out. And I just went down to a local jeweler and had him silver solder it for me. Dynamite, it's actually doing pretty good. I'm down to where I can hit a Coke can with it at about 10, 15 yards pretty reliably. I'm starting to back up now. When I can get to 20, 25 yards, then we'll talk. But thus far, I can stay on a Coke can about 8 out of 10 shots and hit what I'm aiming at. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Oh yeah, Wiki Viking. Glad you're all okay. Well, Mike Bolton, the good news is now that we got it going again, it's live, and afterwards you'll be able to listen to anything we said. It'll be out there to pick up again. Well, Tiny Titan, it depends. You're way up there. It's not as common up in your neck of the woods to have bees and stuff like that. Down here in my area, they're everywhere. So the price is about $10 for a quart, but they're not as common up in your area. So up there in that Pacific Northwest. Yeah, Tibor, the aluminum, food grade aluminum and working class aluminum are different, and there's stuff in it that's the difference. The food grade aluminum, you can heat it up, it doesn't affect it at all. And but the other stuff, and sometimes you get cheap stuff out of China made out of the other stuff, can have problems. I used to be an archery instructor for Boy Scouts, and I used to shoot a hickory bow that I made, but I have not shot archery in several years. Will, do you prefer a Kephart or a Nesmuk pattern knife? Of the two, the Kephart. Although I do like the Nesmuk pattern, and Nesmuk pattern is great for use around camp for cooking. But the all-around woodscraft knife, I would go with the Kephart over the two. Paul, fantastic. WC knives will last the rest of your life. They're fantastic knives. Preacher, yeah, I've got a good friend of mine that she worked with me at Walmart for a number of years, about 6, 8 miles from me, and she runs bees. And so we get our honey from her. And my wife likes to put it into her tea and coffee. And it does seem to help with your allergies and does seem to help keep your joints from being so bad. Plus, honey is a fantastic topical apply to keep bacteria and stuff to keep infection down. It's used for thousands of years as something to smear onto a wound to because it is antibacterial. Nothing lives in it, and so it's good to have as a resource. Wicked Viking, cool. Yeah, archery can be a very rewarding hunting, target shooting, very relaxing. And once you get into making your own arrows, your own bows, and everything else, it becomes very all encompassing. You feel very independent because you're able to create your own. Now, we'd make PVC pipe bows. And if you look up Backyard Bower, he was a guy in Hawaii that made some very impressive PVC pipe bows. And I made them up for the neighborhood kids. We got out in the front yard and I made up bows for everybody. It's cheap, it's quick, it's available, and it's a way to practice, and you ain't got no money in it. I love a hickory bow, but a lot of work in a hickory bow too. And it's one of those world go to hell skills. I said, if the world does go to hell, think of how much PVC pipe's going to be all these derelict buildings. I know how to make bows out of them. All I need is a campfire and an oven mitt, and I can make a bow. So look at Backyard Bower. It's really interesting what he can do with that. Uh, Shadow, yes, honey is very good for a lot of things. Buckeye, I don't watch a lot of other prepper channels and bushcraft. Not because I got anything against them. It's just I'm doing so much of mine. I'm so busy. And so a lot of times whenever I'm sitting and waiting for one of my videos to upload or whatever else, I'm sitting there doing my little hunting. A lot of times it's nature stuff or history stuff or stuff like that. Bushcraft, woodcraft's kind of my job. And so, I'm likely to get caught up wanting to look at Mongolian throat singing. Who knows? Something will catch my attention and I'll go surf around while I'm waiting. But I do look sometimes at other people's channels, just not as much as you think I would. Oh, yes, yes, Anthony, I remember who you are. Yeah, I got you. What do you think of Bushmaster survival knives? To be honest, I don't have an opinion. I've seen them, but I haven't done anything with them. And I don't like to just make a blind thing. They seem to be a decent knife, but I have not spent any time with them. And so I cannot make an honest opinion. All I can comment on is the looks. So I can't really give you in depth on that. Yeah, Grey Wolf, the 49s are great little pocket guns and play guns. And I've got my pocket Navy that I really, really like. I just got to get it to dial down a little bit more. I can shoot small game with it, but I really want to get the group stand a little bit more. I want a bunny gun for up close. Yeah, I agree. Well, 31 would be a little light for that. You're going to stick it in his ear. But you got to remember the world record grizzly for many years was taken with a 22 long rifle. He was one of the Inuit girls shot it went straight in his ear and cut his brain stem. Published all over Alaska when it happened. But the headline was, "She pulled the trigger, God guided the bullet." Shadow, got any tricks for mosquitoes? Yes, mosquitoes are attracted to you by your breath. They smell a waste gas in our breath and they'll swim up it like a shark swimming up a blood trail. One, if you change your pH of your blood, taking vitamin B, any of the vitamin Bs, you make yourself a little bit toxic to them. That's the reason that mosquito get up here and start doing that. Yeah, 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 yeah. They're trying to smell the pH of your blood. If it's too high or too low, they ain't going to bite you because it'll kill their babies. And the female bites you, draws the blood into it. She uses it to feed it and incubate her babies before she puts them in the water. And so if you're toxic, she's not going to bite you because you'll kill her babies. And so that's one. Two, at sundown, when the sun's going down and the mosquitoes come up, that's when I want a smoky fire right in front of me with the smoke going straight away from me so that my breath is in all that smoke. I want to stand in that smoke and turn around and smoke me up to kind of can hide my personal scent a little bit. If you have the American Beautyberry, that's one of the best natural insect repellents I know of. That and cedar, cedar bark, cedar shavings, all of the above. No insect like cedar. So you can put cedar shavings in your clothes, at home to store them in your woods clothes and help. Permethrin, spray your clothes and your gears down. Don't wear it until it's fully dry, but that'll help keep bugs away as well. A lot of little bitty things you can do, but ultimately it's how sweet you are and how bad they want you. So Dave, any advice for ticks besides permethrin? Vicks Vapor Rub. Rub it onto your legs right above your socks. They don't like Vicks Vapor Rub. But most ticks down here in my area drop on you. They don't come up from the ground, they drop down off of you. So around the inside back of your collar, put a little bit of Vicks Vapor Rub. Right here at the edge of your sleeves, put a little Vicks Vapor Rub. If you got a button-up shirt like this that they can go in this way, put a little streak up and down there. I carry quite often Vicks Vapor Rub in the summer just for that. One, it helps open my head up at night. When I lay down, I'm one of them. My head kind of plugs up for a minute. So I'll put it up under my nose. But I'll also use, if we got heavy ticks, I'll put it in areas that they're going to get in, and they don't like that camphor, and it'll keep them off of me. Buckeye 80, one knife, one axe, and one gun. Okay, one knife. WC Knives Blackbird. One axe. One of the canoe axes about that big. Either a Norland or one of the German, I can't pronounce the names of it. Either one of those two work really, really well. And one gun. If you pin me down to only get one, it's probably going to be a single shot shotgun. Probably a 20 gauge for me or a 12 will work either way, because with that I can do all kinds of things to be able to feed myself one way or the other and defend myself. So if it is only one that I can maintain in the field no matter what, it's going to be that. Gordon, hey, glad you made it. Doing pretty good. Yeah, Wicked Viking, they are now making different soaps and stuff, and I bought some while I was up there, and they got a bug dope and stuff like that. Try it. The one I got one of them. It's the pine sap based, and pine sap stuff is great for cuts, antibacterial, all kinds of stuff. So it's a healing salve in the field for putting on your cuts, abrasions, and stuff like that. I've used just plain pine sap many times. And so the bug dope actually works really well. So try it out. Yeah, 2020 Wayne. In Alabama, it sounds like a flight of B-52s coming over when mosquitoes come by your hammock at night. So, yeah, you think it's a pterodactyl, especially when they go to bite you. Yeah, T-board. They will come up and down, up there in Ohio, and especially even in Kentucky. We were at campcraft, and the grass seemed to be moving with ticks. I mean, I picked at least a dozen off of me that didn't attach, so I caught the movement. So yeah, that part of the country up there, you're gonna have them both ways a lot. Down here, most of my ground is a little too sandy for their liking. There's too many things on the ground that'll eat them, so they like to get out on the ends of limbs and drop on deer and things like that. Yeah, Peter, Lyme disease is a certain tick, and they usually have to stay stuck to you for several hours or a day before they can transmit enough that overwhelms your immune system. Now, that's what I've heard from medical reports. So I always do at least one. If I'm in a heavy tick area, I do a run through at least once or twice a day. And definitely when I'm laying down at night, I run fingers every dang where, making sure one hadn't snuck up on me and got on me that I'm not aware of. You know, lay there in your bed and do like that and rub your back and see if you feel something on your back like it's stuck to you. And I always do a test like that just to make sure. Yeah, David, if you just put uh, uh, something onto them, a lot of times they'll let go. We used to just burn them with a match when I was a kid, but that's not so bright anymore, especially with people I know. They're more likely to burn you. But I take Vicks Vapor Rub and gob on them, and they'll just back right out. Vaseline works good for that. WD-40 works good for that. He has to breathe through his skin. And so you get any kind of blockage on that, he's out of air, pretty quick. I've even stuck duct tape on one time and leave it about 10 minutes and peel the duct tape off, and he'll come with it because he'll try to back out. He can't breathe through that duct tape. Okay, Shadow, found your channel a week ago. Do you remember that wallet trail trap you made? Can you explain and why, other than spooking someone? Because that one had me scratch my. Are you talking about the yo-yo fishing reel one that I did that would trigger, or the hook line trigger? It's used as camp security A, because I want to know something's around me. Now, if you're in an area around bears, big boars, big mean dogs, down here in my south, we had a lot of rabid dogs that were hunting dogs, got loose and went wild. And so I would sometimes put such trip wires around my camp in areas to alert me on some of the major trails coming in. Either A, there was some ne'er do well, or something this way I needed to pay attention. Something like that. It can also be an indicator of game, where I want to know which of these trails is the best one to hunt on. I put some sort of thing like that so it triggered, and it was obviously not wind that triggered it. That would let me know there was activity there that I need to look for. Yeah, Wicked Viking. I know some people that's had that the disease that get out of ticks and make them allergic to meat. That would suck. Well, hello, Jerry. Thank you very much for coming over from Waypoint. Okay, Bear, be safe. Yes, Shadow, such a alert does let them know something was there, but you put it where it's not directly linked to you. And in fact, that can be an advantage, because by it going flash right there, somebody go, what the heck is this? They'll sit there for 10 minutes investigating it, trying to figure out what did it and why. And that gives you time either to announce yourself or to quietly slip away. So you don't put it there at you. You put it in range where you can hear it goes off. But that way you have a pre-made slide out of there. Be quiet. Now y'all got me thinking about ticks now, I'm itching. Yes, that was one where I want somebody to pick it up. It's some sort of alert or something like that. Um, An animal would care less. A man would pick that up. And so, for example, we had equipment that was down in the woods on the back side of the farm. And I've rigged something up like that before to find out if somebody was coming back here messing with the equipment or not. And yes, tracks can give away, but some of these rednecks know how to avoid tracks. But a dollar bill sticking out of a fake wallet, they just couldn't resist. They'd pick it up. And that would tell me it was a person. So things like that. Yeah, because a deer could care less. But somebody will pick it up. Have I tried out the Pathfinder knife shop knives? I have sat and whittled with one a little bit. Matt Mercer had one at one point. We were at Frozen Foot. I think it was a Scorpion. And I got to play with it. It seemed to be a well thought out knife. It cut well and it held an edge well. So it seemed to be a very well made knife. Ricky Allen, hello there. Yeah, that one I just spoke of, Gray Wolf. It was some way to see if it's a human coming in. If I wanted you to trigger something intentionally for whatever reason, I put a bait down there that you ain't gonna want to pass up. Beer, bottles of beer, or money or something, you're gonna pick it up. The how is what we're talking about. The why is up to you. Why do you want to know this? Why they need to be there? There can be a lot of reasons for that, especially when you're living on a off the grid place and you're kind of alone out here in the county and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And I have a lot of friends that have had that very trouble because they got them a retirement place or whatever, and they're in the middle of 40 acres on the backside of nowhere in a county road. And then they're hearing noises and stuff during the night. And is this animals or is this somebody? And then you find footprints. So is it somebody planning on robbing, stealing, or whatever? And so you got to find them, you know. One was a paint bomb that rigged up a tractor with a paint bomb that whenever you opened up the toolbox, you got sprayed with paint, so we could find you. And sure enough, they went down there when they flipped open that toolbox trying to steal tools. And they had a dope problem. They were trying to find something they could steal. They thought wouldn't be missed. They could take it to the pawn shop, make a little bit of money. And we had rigged it up. So they flipped that box lid open. They got sprayed with bright pink spray paint from head to toe. And so it was not hard to figure out who it was the next day. It was the one showing up at school that didn't want anybody to take a look at their hair because their hair still had paint in it. They couldn't wash it all out. Woo, Wicked Viking, yes. Nesmunk had a book. There's a book on Nesmunk other than his woodcrafting camping. There's a book that I'm reading right now that's of his works that he did. And Beard, you're looking for the gentleman's name is Beard. He did a lot with early Boy Scouts and stuff like that. He's good to read. God, I suck at calling names out of the top of my head. I'd say Beard. Go look at Beard next. And of course, Kephart and several others, but they're all right there together. And there's one starts with a W. I cannot get it right off the top of my head, but he wrote a really good book. I've been saying I'm going to do a library video where I'm going to bring out all my bushcraft books and give y'all the names of it. I am going to do that. And I'm going to try to do some of that next Thursday. I'll have a stack of my books and I'll bring up and give y'all names and stuff. So I will try to remember that. Okay. Yeah, Shadow. The Moro knives are for the money one of the best deals you're going to get. Good knives hold up well. They're good knives. They're not pry bars, but they're good knives. Peter, Blackie used to talk about making a tar paper shack. How are they made and how long do they last? Okay, how we would do it was today is we would find some existing small trees that would form roughly a couple, many corners as we could figure out of, let's say, a cabin. They were already just growing naturally close enough together where I can lash pole across here, that way. And then we would take and make construction knots. And what that is simply a loop with a couple of tail ends on it. You would cut your poles, say 6, 8 feet long, alternating big end, little end, big end, little end. And you'd stick an end into the loop, which is going this way, and you would twist it, stick the next pole in, twist it, stick the next pole in until you get all the way out here the end. You take that last little bit and you stick your pole in and you wind it up like a windlass, and that pulls the cord tight, and you'd fold it over the top and take those 2 ties and tie it. Now, with that piece, you can make an elevated bed, a table, or whatever, but you could also make the wall of a cabin by putting it up against the cabin, and lashing it to those poles. Once you got that rough frame together, you took tar paper and went around it. On the outside, just staple it. Now, if you take a staple gun, and go to tar paper, it's probably going to blow right through it. So what you do is you get at the top and you take you a piece of bank line or some other string. Use the cheap cord. Don't use bank line. Just go get you a roll of cheap cord from Walmart in the fishing area. Tie a knot one and get it up there at the top and staple it to stick at the top. Pull it straight down and then go down that line so that the staple hooks over the string like that. And that's how you would staple the tar paper to the structure. So you went around the bottom first, and then you come up next, and here's the top of the bottom row. You would overlap like 6 inches, and here's the next row. So water couldn't come in or nothing like that, and you go all the way around, leaving a space for a door. The roof, you would put a center ridge up there and take these sections you just made and stand them up like that from the side wall over the top. And again, you'd run tar paper across this way, or the easiest way we do it would go all the way over the top, staple, another one, leaving about a 6-inch overlap, staple, 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 all the way to the end. You'd put one of them together, and they'd last 3 or 4 years until either the sticks gave up the ghost or the tar paper finally dried out enough and became brittle that it would no longer hold water. And you could always go back over it with another row of tar paper. But those were hunting camps that we'd build down there near hunting blinds and things like that, where you could go down there and spend the night, have you a cot or something in it, and then be on, get up in the morning and hike 25, 30 yards to your actual deer stand and be sitting there to hunt deer. Since it was there since August, the deer were used to it and they didn't even pay it any attention. And so you could basically have your own little cabin to go hunting in. Azrael, Blackie, I was just wondering if you have any knowledge to share about protecting yourself from snakes while in the wilderness. Yes. Snakes are not evil, but they do have personalities. The standard operating procedure in the eastern woodlands, I cannot discuss the deserts. I have not been there. I only have basic knowledge of it. But in the eastern woodlands, snakes are going to come out in the morning. They're going to get out in the sun. They're going to warm up. And then they're going to get out of the sun because they can overheat quite easily, which means they're going to get in the shady side of a log or up under a bush or whatever, and they're going to coil up in their striking coil, and they're going to take a nap. Snakes do not chase anything down. They're ambush predator where something walks by in range and they hit it. So they're going to coil up under that bush, and they're going to snuggle all the way down, and they're going to take a nap. Where you become the problem is you're walking along and you step, thump, and you either step on it or step right in front of it, and you wake it up, and it sees a dark boot, and it strikes out a reflex, because if a bunny lands, they got to be fast, right? So they're kind of going to sleep, ready to strike. If you will simply take you a stick, like a walking stick, and in front of you do this, if you can't see the ground real well because there's too many bushes, do this back and forth. Disturb them. You'll wake the snake up. Usually if the snake is awake, he'll let you walk right by him and he won't strike you. You're too big. You know, I've seen people step right over a 5 foot rattlesnake and not realize what they stepped over. They just thought it was a limb. And so they just stepped over it. The snake was awake and knew that they were, okay, they'll freeze. You'll eliminate a lot of problems that way. Two, if you see a snake like that and you can give ground, just go around it. Keep about a 5 foot interval between you and the snake. If he's stretched out, he can only strike just a few inches. If he's coiled, he can strike outward up to his length plus a little. So I always give him like a 5 foot strike zone around them. If I have no choice but to go right where this snake is, I'll take a stick of some kind. Again, a good idea is to cut you and have you a walking stick from at least head high down to the ground. Take the stick and just kind of hook the side of him and shoo him off, hook him in the middle and sling him off down yonder in the woods. You should be fine and just walk on by. That's what I've done. I'm in part of the South that's got all the pit vipers. We have all the venomous snakes down here, and a ton of other kinds too. So yeah, that's what I do down here is how I get around them without having to cause a lot. I don't want to have to kill them. I want them to be fine and go live their nice little life, but I don't want to be envenomated either, because I remember hearing not long ago about somebody who got struck, and when they went in to get anti-venom, it was $50,000. Let me say that again. $50,000 for the anti-venom to be administered. That was just that part of the hospital bill. I have no desire to have a $250,000 bill for getting bit by a snake, so I'm going to avoid them puppies. Copperheads are the worst. They blend in so well, and they'll just sit there until you step on them. So that's my advice for snakes. Tennessee Smoky, Blackie, which of the military surplus mess kits would you recommend based on your personal experience? The U.S. Army mess kit is very, very good as a small fry pan. If you want a whole kit, I would definitely go with the Swedish M40. That is by far the most versatile kit that I've got, and that's my personal carry kit. That if I'm going to be using one, that's the way to go. I can do so many things in that kit. I can bake in it. I can boil in it. I can fry in it. I can stew in it. I can whatever. Add a Trangia stove and you're set to go. That is the kit for me. Jake Trent, good evening, sir. Yeah. Yeah, Buckeye, snake boots are a real asset when you're going to be in that. And I had really good leather ones for a long time that went from the knees down because we got big rattlers down here. I've been hit several times wearing them boots, but those boots saved me. But I was working with people where we were going in swamps and stuff where you had to have boots. You needed chaps or whatever because it wasn't going to, if it was, how many are you going to see? So. And, the thing about snakes is, like I said, they don't want to bite you, but they do have personalities. Some are more likely to strike than others, and some you just got to mess with them. They'll just sit there and you just get the vibe of, don't mess with me. I'll leave you alone if you just leave me alone. They know you're too big. They know that if they strike you, you're going to stomp them to death. That's from what I've heard from people that talk about evolution. That's why the rattlesnake evolved rattles, because he wanted a audio warning, because he came up in the time of giant buffalo and giant cattle and big herbivores that would just stomp 2 tons in the middle of you. And so it didn't matter if you struck him, he's going to stomp you to death. So they learned to rattle to try to warn you, leave me alone. Now that doesn't work so much down here anymore because all the ones that rattled, we shot. So it was the ones that didn't rattle are now having babies. And so rattlesnakes don't rattle like they used to. When I was a kid, you'd hear them singing. You don't anymore because everybody totes guns, Buckeye, what brand of boots for protection? To be honest, I cannot remember. I bought mine probably in the mid 80s and had mine up till about 99 or 2000. So it's been 23 years ago I got rid of mine. Somebody that was doing real dangerous work needed them, and they talked me into selling mine to them. It was about $150 pair of boots. That was a lot of money back then. Red Wing does good, I can tell you that. Yeah, Shadow, snake venom is such a complicated component. We have yet to figure out how to synthesize it. You know, it is that complicated chemically that it's a nightmare to even think about it. And you look at the things we can do with computers and etc., and they cannot fully understand snake venom. So, gray wolf, yes, the eastern diamondback is the largest rattler. Right below that is the timber rattler. Sometimes down here in the south called the canebrake. And their venom is slightly different. The eastern diamondback is a pain inducing. Um, you're actually the one doing the damage to yourself. When the venom is injected into you, all the pain sensors of you activate. It is not that the venom is acid and you're burning, it's the magic bullet that tells your body to turn on all the pain receptors like you got your leg in lava. Because the timber rattler, the eastern diamondback, you'll find rabbits that get struck and their back legs don't work and they're trying to crawl with just the front legs. The pain is so severe their back legs freeze up, and that's what the diamondback is trying to do, is to get the animal it can't follow you far. It's not a runner, and so it's trying to not really paralyze you, but paralyze you by pain, so you won't run away. And there are a lot of people who have been struck and talk about the pain was unbearable like that. Now again, it's them. I've known people that were struck and did not experience that. The timber rattler is right below that. And then things like copperheads, they're more like a hemorrhagic. They just dissolve and bleed a lot. And I think there's only been one recorded case of someone ever dying of copperhead bite, and that was they had poor health. So it's something that's going to be bad, and you're probably going to lose a finger or whatever it was that got bit, but you're probably going to survive. So there's different levels there. And moccasins, it's just because their mouth is so dirty because of the bacteria that it almost always sets up gangrene. I mean, in hours. So it's as much the venom as it is the gangrene that causes problems. So there's a lot of reasons not to get bit. Yeah, wicked Viking. That's one of the things. Anti venom is unicorn blood. It has to be fresh. It has to be handled very specifically. That's the reason nobody has ever come up with a, like the EpiPens. Nobody's come up with it. You have to have it administered in a medical situation. And it itself, the antivenom itself, can be very bad if improperly administered. So too much of the antivenom can kill you, especially the type of venom is there to keep you from coagulating. So you're going to hemorrhage. Well, the antivenom is basically a super clotter, and if you get somebody wrong, they get blood clots and die because all their blood clots up and their heart and their brain shuts down because of it. So it's a real touchy thing. That's one reason they charge ridiculously for it, and I can understand and respect it. And that's the reason I want to avoid that paycheck, problem if I have to. If I can do it, avoid it. Ford Tractor, good evening. Kansas. All right, you're getting your Blackbird. I hope you have many years of enjoyment with it. They're great. Peter, are baby snakes more poisonous than adults? Actually, it's not they're more poisonous. It's just they haven't learned to regulate their venom as well. And so every time they bite, they dump all they got. Where an adult is actually more conservative, they will realize that they only need amount for a mouse or for whatever. And they don't want to take the time to if they completely drain out their sacs, it takes them a week or more to make venom again of any quantity. And so they don't dump. And that's, you've heard of a dry bite, and that's usually a mature snake that bit you but did not inject. And that's like the ultimate get off me. I'm about to get serious. And so a dry bite can happen, but never plan on it. But baby snakes dump everything they got. And so it can be, kind of bad. Hello, Snapper. Good to see you. Jonathan, hello to Columbus, Ohio. Yeah, K-Town. Komodos, with that saliva they got, it's as much gangrene as anything else, and it's just infection normally brings them down. Okay, I'm going to say Thayer Jacobs. Thank you very much, and I hope you learn a lot. Thank you very much for coming in. Oh, the Ohio and up here, y'all got, I know the name of it. It's the only rattlesnake y'all got. It's not like our pygmy. Dadgummit. That'll come to me about 2 o'clock in the morning. But we have down here in my neck of the woods, you have the possibility of encountering coral snake, timber rattlesnake, eastern diamondback rattlesnake, pygmy rattlesnake. I have seen a cottonmouth snake and a cottonmouth cross with a water snake before. I've seen that. I have seen a copperhead and a pygmy rattlesnake cross before. And I have seen an eastern diamondback and a timber rattler cross before. So, you're up to 7, 8, They're rare, but they're not. And we have the eastern and western copperhead down here. And the difference is if he's shiny or not. If you look at his scales, if he's a little bit dull, kind of like satin, that's an eastern. If he's shiny, he's western. I'm right at the 2 terms of it. I've got all those above down here. So, yeah. Max, thank you very much. And we also have the largest indigenous snake in the United States, the blue indigo, and he's up to 20 feet long. And it's a $25,000 fine to harm him. He's a gigantic king snake. He eats other snakes. You leave them alone. They're docile as all get out. They could care less about you, but they'll run a rattlesnake down in a heartbeat and eat them. And then, of course, now down in Florida, you've got anacondas and you've got pythons. And they better not show up in Alabama in my lifetime. I'm going to be making boots. That's 500 pounds of chicken there. You know that? It tastes like chicken. Barry Carr, glad it helped. Yeah, down here we've got, it's a timber rattlesnake, but we call it a cane brake because it liked to hang out in the bamboo and the river cane and stuff like that. That pattern it has blends in with those leaves on the bottom really, really well. And so we started calling them cane brakes. Ooh. Yeah, that would be a cross, Wicked Viking. That would be a cross. Back in the day, all snakes that I'm aware of in the United States are edible. There are no poisonous to eat. But do not, let me re-emphasize this, do not play with the head of a venomous snake, such as a rattlesnake, after it's dead. Even though they are dead, graveyard dead, there is a muscle reaction that can happen. And we had a young man here in my local area 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. He had killed and skinned a right at 5 foot diamondback and left the head on it and skinned it and rolled it up, putting the head in the middle. Made a wad about like that big a hide. And he intended to tan the hide and make something out of it. And like 3 or 4 hours after he had killed the snake and cleaned it, where all it is skin now and a head. And he had severed right below the throat, so it's the whole head. He went to show his dad, and he unrolled it. And the head is laying in his hand like that, and suddenly the fangs popped out and stuck him in the thumb, and he lost his thumb because of it. Even though the snake is dead, graveyard dead, that muscle electric reaction, like you hear about frogs' legs putting in a pan and they go to kicking, happen. So you never mess with the head after he's dead, because it can possibly still bite you. So don't mess with the head. As far as the meat, eat up. It tastes kind of like any other reptile. Terry Queen, yeah, it's Australia. We had the crocodile hunter came to America to do some stuff, and he went down south of me to where the rangers go and play in the swamps of Florida. If you remember that episode, he's running around and somebody spotted a snake. And he runs down there and he scoops it up in his hands. And he's sitting there talking. The little thing coiled up and went to look. And then he's talking, and he suddenly just gets quiet. And he said, "This is my fault, and I take full responsibility for it. This is a pygmy rattlesnake, and he's warming up because of my hand." It was a cold morning. He's from Australia. He may know them, but he doesn't have hands-on experience. And a pygmy may only be that long. And so he mistakenly thought it was another kind of snake, and he picked it up until he saw it coil up. And you're watching it live on camera, and that little tail come up and went to go, and he realized he's holding a pygmy rattlesnake. So, yeah, he said, "I take full responsibility," and he gently laid it down on a log and got his hands away from it. So, yeah, guys in Australia, you got them browns and all like that. They're bad down there, But we got stuff up here, too. Blackie, what's your opinion on jungle knots? Love them. I use jungle knots to hang hammocks. I use them to make quick shelters for like a debris hut type frame. I've used them to make blinds. And if you go back through my videos, it's been in the last year, definitely between now and last year, this time, that I've done videos showing using a jungle knot to make a blind out of, and also to make the ribs of a survival shelter right quick. Love them. Very, very useful for carrying firewood. Excuse me. They're very, very, very useful. That's it, Mike Simmons. Massassauga. That's it. I remember reading an article from the Boundary Waters area up there in Michigan or Minnesota. And the guy got into a sleeping bag and got bit on the foot by a Massassauga that was in the sleeping bag. Yeah, Paul, I have seen that my whole life. The Metabolism of snakes is so slow. I have cut them in half with a hoe, and it's got to be dead, right? I mean, it's cut completely in half, and yet, come up 3 or 4 hours later, and you watch the eye focus. Their metabolism is that slow. It's dying, but it's dying so slow. And so we always made a point of take the head off. Whatever kind of snake it is, if we determine we have to kill this animal, we take the head off. Take the head off, stomp that puppy flat, whatever. We don't even want it to suffer by that long, slow death. But if it's gotta be, we're gonna get rid of it. It's amazing how those things can hang on, so to speak. It should be dead, but yeah, gray wolf, they'll cluster together in big dens. We had I think it was about 3 foot deep, maybe 2 foot wide, 2 foot long, 3 foot deep. That was a bricks sat down in the ground. That way back in the day had been something, you know. And when I was a kid, it had growed over big time. And we were playing ball, a bunch of us kids, and a ball went up and hit the bush that was right at the edge of that hole. And we knew where it was. Us kids, exploring, had seen that brick hole. And one of the kids had kicked the ball and it hit. And when it hit, all you heard was rattlesnakes. And so we went and got the adults. And the adults came out there, got us all away from it, and they went using hose, and they pulled 35 rattlesnakes out of that den. It was in spring, so they had denned in there during the winter. There were 35 rattlesnakes in that hole. So, yeah, imagine if a kid had gone up and stuck their arm in there. Bear's back in the house. We went and shot some videos with Bear today. Posting soon. Yeah, the brown recluses and everything. Spiders and stuff don't bother me. I've had them crawl on me. I don't panic. I just shoo them off or whatever. I've had black widows on me and stuff. I just don't panic with spiders or nothing like that. And I guess they can feel that calm because I've had a couple of close calls with them before. I was doing some work in a barn, getting stuff out and pulling stuff off of shelves, and you just getting spider webs all over you and stuff like that. And I reached down and grabbed a hold of something, and I had to hold it. And they were on the other end pulling, and I had to keep it from falling. As I'm sitting there holding it, I watched this brown recluse come in right here and go on the inside of my glasses, between my eye and my glasses. And I managed to hold on. I just closed my eyes and sat there, and I felt it crawl, come out, come around here, and I felt it drop off my face. Didn't run Fruit of the Looms, but I didn't breathe a whole lot for a couple of minutes there either. Mm-hmm. JB, we've talked about doing another. Well, we did an old ways today, but we might do an old ways live, especially when we're doing his canon or something. We might do something like that. That's going to be like a 30-minute project or something like that. We may do a live that way one day soon. Spade Tiller, do you carry a modern firearm as a woods gun? If not, why? I do carry modern guns and I do carry percussion guns. It just depends on the situation. I have modern tactical handguns, high capacity guns like everybody else. It's more of a personal defense gun. And I do have like 1911s, which run hog or something like that. A big heavy 45 is good. And I've got single actions and I've got double actions. It just depends on what mood I'm in and what I think I'm going to encounter. I love my cap and balls and love carrying them. I feel very confident I can take care of myself for 99.9% anything I'd really, really need. But if I think I need more firepower, I'm going to go to a long gun or I'm going to talk an automatic. So I do carry all of the above. I just don't put them on YouTube a lot because of the way YouTube is. Shadow, what do you think about the last couple months' weather? It's abnormal. We're seeing a end of an El Nino that lasted a couple of years. And so the atmosphere is kind of reacting. I mean, it's been kind of stuck in a pattern for a couple of years now that really it was abnormal for it. The ebb and flow every year, and this time it's stuck and it went 2 years in a row. So you got a lot of energy that the old planet's got to kind of redistribute a little bit. So yeah, it's odd, definitely odd. Having cool temperatures down 20 degrees cooler than normal here in the South in June, I'll take it. Sorry, I'll take it. I will not apologize. Peter, thank you. Yeah, the kukri is actually a really good digging tool. And there'll be a video coming up this Sunday where I'm going to be digging a different kind of fire hole that you may have not seen. I'll be using my kukri for that. But that hang loose, that's coming this Sunday. Worm Wrangler, yeah. When you have a brown recluse crawling around on your face, I didn't ruin my Fruit of the Looms. Y'all doing good comments. Enjoy it. Yeah, all the fires up there in Quebec. Smoke coming all the way down to Ohio and everywhere else. So y'all had a unnatural amount of fires pop up. Eric, I keep saying that I'm going to put videos over on Rumble. I've got a Rumble account. I put one video up just to hold it. And my idea was to go over there and do my pro gun videos. And so things about the 1911, things about revolvers, back from my gunsmithing days, like I've done for my percussion revolver series. But I be honest, I've been so busy with everything else. Every time I go, okay, this week I'm gonna do 3 videos and go post over there, and But now, hey, you got to admit, I mean, I'm kind of the machine when it comes to posting. A lot of these other bigger channels than me, and they post once a month, once every 2 weeks, things like that, and I'm pumping out 3 a week. So I'm doing my best to try to get the information out there. But I look at a lot of these guys that got a much bigger channel than mine, and he posts 1 video a month. Yeah, Jerry Dunlap. When I was going to Pathfinder and we had those severe sales on me, I ran through a tornado, literally. It passed right behind me, like 100 yards or less behind me, and blew me sideways all at once. We're having those kind of storms and weather down here, and everything is fine. Everything is beautiful. And suddenly you got 60, 70 mile an hour winds that last 10 minutes and it quits because there's so much upheaval in the atmosphere where the jet stream was in a holding pattern over us here in the South. And so the moisture would rise up and it hit it and it just tear the top of the storm off, and that would start this rolling. And boom, you got a supercell in just a matter of minutes, it seemed like. And intense hail, intense rain, and those winds, that jet stream can be moving 200 or 300 miles an hour, and that wind get turned down just a little bit or slap down and you get downdraft 70, 80 miles an hour all at once. We're every place you go around here, you see it. When I was leaving Thursday going to Pathfinder, I turned on this little 2-lane road up here leaving from Enterprise going to Troy, Alabama. That's Highway 167. I counted 31 trees, either down in the road or touching the road, not blocking the road, but you know what I mean. 31 trees, limbs everywhere. And that had been in the 24 hours of storms leading up to that. So high intense weather. Wicked Viking, you running a school? I do classes from time to time. I do not run a school per se, but I'm going to be working with James Bender to do the Silver Wolf camp out in October. I do my gathering in the spring, and I've been asked to work with other schools, big name schools. I was asked at this Pathfinder gathering next year to do class at Pathfinder gathering. So we will see. So this coming year is probably going to be pretty interesting. Chuck Miller, what happened in Montgomery last week? They had the real intense storms roll over and had tornadoes go through around the edges. That's where I was at, where the tornado spun me sideways. That was about 6 or 8 miles, 10 miles at the most out of Montgomery. And there were other things. It was just wave after wave coming through. Hurricane force storms, but it only lasted 25, 30 minutes and move on. And then an hour later, you get another one. I mean, you'd watch the radar and it would bloom up and go super intense. And it'd be that 15, 20 minutes. And then it was just gone. And you'd have it. What it was is the thermal rise up, catch that jet stream, be knocked over, super intensified, do this rolling and form this supercell. And then it would just blow out. Super intense. Well, back in the day, I hope you have a safe trip. Terry Quinn, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah, Wicked Viking. Yeah. I mean, it was just boom, 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 outbreak after outbreak. Mm-hmm. We're seeing an unusually active June. Usually, June is relatively mild as far as storms. You have storms of the spring, and then there's like a gap. And then you start having stuff gear back up in July and August. This year it didn't. It intensified. And like I said, it was multiple years that El Nino that kind of, I want to say, just like lulled the planet into a certain layer. Now that's gone, and you're seeing this up and down where they're talking 80, 90 degrees up into northern Canada, you know, where that heat that should be in Texas has gone all the way up dang near to Siberia and North Pole. And at the same time, cool air coming down on either side of it. So we're here in Alabama in this time of June. I would expect to have already broke 100 degrees. I would expect to have days where the highs in the day be 102, 103, 90% humidity, and nights somewhere around, 78 or 79 for an overnight low. And we're having lows in the 60s and highs in the day in the 80s. In places that in times this is like 20 degrees cooler than what I'm expecting for my summer. And yet where Justin is and all like that over in Texas, they're having 120, in places. So yeah, it's that undulation sucking the heat of the deserts of Mexico all the way up, and that cool air flowing around it. So it's a real shake up, Snapper, thank you very much. I'm glad to come up with information and try to share it. And sometimes I come up with something the average person hadn't seen. So thank you very much. JB, what grit stone is best for use for general sharpening before honing? I'd say somewhere around a 400 grit, something like that. There's enough tooth to that. And if you bear down, you can hog off more metal. But if you go light, you kind of polish a little bit. And so somewhere around a 400, 420 grit, something like that is where I try to stay, and not bear down, just go real light. You know, I want it to kind of cut the grooves into the steel. That gives it a tooth. So even the stainless steel then has some tooth and bites. Diamond hones are good for that. And then when I go to my actual hone, I'm kind of polishing those rough edges and getting it where it cuts clean. So somewhere along in there for a standard field knife, where I go. Satchmo, learned a lot from Silverwool's video. Thank you very much. Hope to do more in the future. Yeah, we read journals and stuff in the far past of the 1800s. They talked about severe heat, severe storms that just came out of nowhere. In history, we show, like in Greece, armies being decimated by hail because they were caught out in the open, and hail the size of your fist fell from the stars, and the gods punished them and beat the soldiers to death. They couldn't even hide under their shields. They were still being beat to death, you know. And then people said, no, it never hails anything like that. Not in that part of the woods. You never know. Time changes, climate changes, everything. The only constant is change. And weather can break you. Heat, cold. Remember what? A year ago, Texas had that Arctic cold sit down on top of it, and they were freezing in Texas in April. I mean, it might as well have been the North Pole. And then this year, they got, severe desert heat sitting there. So Texas is swinging back and forth. It just depends, where you're at. Michigan Prepper. I predict that probably the first 6 months is going to be the tough, because you still have vehicles, you still have fuel. Once that runs out, the animals start getting a break. I predict they'll bounce back within 5 years, because the average person can't or won't walk that far. And so if they ain't got the gas to drive the 60 miles to get to the, see what I'm saying? So then it's bicycles and walking, and they get the advantage. And so it's going to be a tough 6 months to 1 year. And I'm sure they'll be called the Great Dying, because there's going to be a lot of people just starved to death because they don't know what to do. There'll be a lot of time of violence and everything else until a lot of resources run out. And then after that, I think things will kind of rebound back. We shall see. In an absolute worst case scenario. Wicked Viking, how would you put an edge back onto a hatchet that's been chipped out? I would figure out what angle I wanted, whether I wanted a thin edge that's very, very sharp for wood carving and stuff like that, or more blunt edge to be used for busting up for splitting. Okay, that's the difference between a felling axe and a splitting axe. Okay, look up National Forest Service axe sharpening guide, and they detail exactly how to do it. And you will, and Felix Ehrman does a really good video of showing a wadded up rag and a file to use it as a spacer to get his angles. And so look at those, and that's a good way. But I like my edge to come from the actual edge back about a ½ inch. That kind of solid, shiny metal all the way. That's about the angle I want. So when I'm working the file, it should be from the actual edge to a ½ inch back all the way. And just take a file and take it nice and even. Stop. Do it like 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 on the side, 10 on the side. Take it up and look at edge on and make sure my edge ain't drifting to one side or the other and it's staying even. It needs to stay in the middle. If you take too much off of one side, it wants to go the other way. So you want to keep it in the middle. And you just take your time and sharpen. Yeah, Barry Carr, the those water seal work good. It's like Thompson's water sealer. They do good. We used to take a garden sprayer and pour them in and pump them up and spray it, let it dry, turn it 90 degrees, pump it up, spray it again. 3 turns like that, each time spraying it, going top to bottom, hit hold water. It'd be just fine. And you get several years out of it before you had to do it again. K-Town, how sharp should an axe be? I like an axe that is sharp enough that it will cut paper, not like a razor, but it'll cut paper, but not shave. I know that goes against a lot of guys. Oh, it's got to be able to shave. If you hit a gnarly piece of whatever, that edge is too thin. An axe is designed for impact. It's half weight and half speed. And the edge is really a secondary idea to those two. If the profile is right, if the speed is right and the weight is right, it'll cut, even if it's dull. But I don't want it so sharp that when I hit that tough spot, that the edge is going to break off or worse, bend. Because if I ever start the first bend, my next impact bends it more and bends it more. And after a while, you got this wonky edge that won't cut nothing. So I've shocked people when they'd pick up my kukri or whatever and say, it's sharp, but it's not. No, it's not a razor. It's a working tool. And mine don't dull. I can cut and cut and cut all day. And it'll start getting a little dull in about 4 or 5 hours of serious work. But I've seen guys make one like a razor blade and it'll be dull in 20 minutes. Because that edge is too thin and it rolls too easy. What's the job? If we're cutting a fish hook out of me, I want a razor. I want that sucker as sharp as I can get it. If I'm going to be chopping heads off fish for the next 2 or 3 hours, it's about 60% of that edge. If I'm going to be chopping gnarly, brush oak or something like that, that's going to have dirt and sand in it and might have a nail mixed in there with it, it's going to be a whole lot, more robust. I call it robust edge than that. Well, sorry for the snafu earlier. I really don't know what happened. It just all at once it went. What's a good brand of kukri? Kukri House or Gurkha House are the same company out of Nepal. And if you look on Amazon, just search for a kukri, you'll find them. Now, let me warn you about something. Part of the kukri industry is for tourists and it's for show. The other half is a working blade. So if it's fancy embellished, it's probably not a real kukri. It's real, but you know what I mean. It's made for show and the steel end is good. And so the words you're looking for are villager or panawall. Villager means it's a working tool. It's not going to be fancy embellished, and it's meant to be sold as a tool to utilize. If it's all kinds of engraved and got a fancy silver sheath and everything else, that's one that when they're making it showed a flaw, and so it can't be a working tool. So they turned it into a pretty tool in order to sell it for the tourist industry. And but that's my recommendation. Gurkha House, Kukri House. You find them both on Amazon. And a British #2 pattern would be what I recommend blindly to you. A British #2, it will be absolutely a working knife because those are still issued to the British military. And so all of those are made to be issued. And so you will never see one called British issue Model 2. That will not be a real one and will be a hold up to chopping. They'd be too scared that he'd get a bad reputation, so they won't do that. Snapper, I did play with it, and yes, it would boil in our Alabama sun pretty fast. But I actually gave it away off the trade blanket at my gathering. But yes, it did work. Out in your desert, it'd be fantastic. But here in my hot sun, it worked just fine. I faced it to the sun. It wasn't 25, 30 minutes. That sucker was steaming. So, yeah, it does work. Yes, Justin looked up, and #2 is $65. That's about right. Stephen, good evening. Tibor, awesome. Yeah, Wicked Viking. A Bowie is not a bad choice for that, the big knives. I carried a Bowie for many, many years until I got on to the Kukris. I had a big Tremona Bowie that were about that big. It's about, I'd say overall length like 14 inches. And that was my field knife. That was my chopper. That was my shelter builder. That was everything else. I carried a pocket knife for small detail work. And I had a butcher knife stuck into a K-bar sheath for game processing and stuff like that. But that big Bowie, I used it like a kukri, like a short machete or a short sword, and it did really well. Yeah, Worm Wrangler, those cold steels are nice. They really are. Yeah, Wicked Viking, 9 inch for just the blade. Yeah. You add the handle onto it, and you're up to like 14, 15 inches. And of course, doing living history, the Bowie knife is such a historic blade. Um, have you ever heard of a Natchez Bowie? Slight variation on the design. And those, it looks kind of like a cleaver almost when you put it up right next to it. Instead of the handle being in the middle of the blade, it's at the top of the blade, kind of like you think like a meat cleaver. But it comes out to a Bowie end, and then it's got this big belly that comes up on it. And so instead of having a cross guard on it like a standard Bowie, the Natchez uses the blade as a cross guard, the back of the blade. But I knew guys that in living history that used the Natchez a lot, and it was a decent Bowie knife. In fact, for a long time, Dixie Gun Works had a clone of one of the reported Bowie knives, but we know that Jim Bowie didn't invent it. His brother Resin did in Mississippi, where he had been fighting, I believe it was a Choctaw, in a nighttime night fight, and his hand slid down the blade of what he had. So when he got back out, he wanted a cross guard put on it. And that's where the Bowie knife came from. Then he gave that to Jim. Jim got in the famous sandbar fight and made national acclaim using that Bowie, and that's how it became famous. And that's the only knife in the state of Alabama by law you can't legally own, because it was a dueling weapon. And according to Alabama law, a Bowie knife is illegal because it's a dueling weapon. We don't enforce that law anymore. But that law is from like 1829, and I believe definitely by the 1830s, it was listed as a dueling weapon, and just possessing it was grounds for your arrest and being fined because it was a dueling weapon. Justin, Blackie, what are your thoughts on an Arkansas toothpick? Good sticker. Don't have a lot of use for it beyond that. That big old tri-blade, it's a good sticker. But I don't played with the design for just a little bit in living history, and I didn't like it. I'd rather have a Bowie over it, to be honest with you. I'd rather have that solid back than have that edge on top like that. It's just a fighting dagger to me at that point. Wicked Viking, you're correct. The from what we've been able to sort of figure out, some of the earliest ones that came to light, that top edge was not automatically sharpened. It would have been thin, but it was not sharpened. And so the later versions, and you look at a K-bar, and a K-bar is just a Bowie knife. Basically it's a production Bowie knife. And there were all kinds of Bowies back in the day. It was a very, very popular design. Yeah, Wayne, it's not original, I can tell you right now. The original Bowie knife was a patented name that was used later on. The only real examples we can attribute to resin Bowie is the Searle, Seare, Searle Bowie, which is kind of a showy version. And then there's one that's got a little bit more of a clip to it that could have belonged to Jim, that he gave it as a present to somebody. And Dixie Gunworks did almost a 1-to-1 copy of it. It's in a collection in a museum that they can document it came from Bowie, and they can document Bowie gave it as a gift. But the design was, look at my haversack, a Blackbird haversack. How many people could copy it and make slight changes to it? And since those knives in those days were being made by blacksmiths, and there was no internet, there was no picture, you just came in and described it to them, or maybe traced it out on a piece of paper right quick. So there's got to be a ton of variation in the design. It was a basic idea with a cross guard, But the marketing of the original Bowie, that's a marketing one. Yes, corn knives. Yes, I have. Satchmo, yes, we're going to be doing a cooking video very soon. It'll be the searing of a steak in a cool handle skillet. Maybe tomorrow. Texas Joe, glad to do it. Adam, do you feel the Ruger Old Army is dominant over the Remington New Model Army or the Colt Single Action? Well, it's definitely the modern take. The Ruger's got the modern action inside, superior action for durability. We know that because of coil springs and everything. Firepower, it's most definitely a Dragoon. Adjustable sights, head and shoulders better. Metallurgy, fantastic. Metallurgy is, when you read the documentation that came out in the 1960s talking about the Ruger Old Army, and they detailed, now listen to me, do not do this, okay? Do not do this. But Ruger, in their literature, talked about how they filled each chamber full of smokeless powder, capped it, put balls in it, capped it, and locked in a vise, pulled the trigger, and it survived shooting 6 times with smokeless powder, full chamber loads. That gun was so overbuilt. But don't do that, because modern powder is a lot stronger. You might blow that thing into a grenade. But the fact that the Ruger really is, if I was going to pick a cap and ball to go into Alaska and live a year off grid, a Ruger would be a really, really good choice. Even though as much as I know about Colts and Ruger and Remingtons, if you told me I couldn't carry any spare parts, it's going to be a Ruger. Just it's so overbuilt. It's the Klingon of cap and ball revolvers. No. David R. Well, hello over to Slocum. You got them tomatoes in yet? I went and picked up some a while back from y'all. I need to come over and get some more. Love them tomato sandwiches. Woo, Grey Wolf. Yeah, don't do that. That's a big no-no. David R. Oh, yeah, they got great tomatoes. Jared, Blackie, what's your favorite Western? Woo! Well, Lonesome Dove is up there in the high column. I'll put it that way. Big Jake would be up there in the high running. Silverado is a good fun one. That's a good question, because I love Westerns. I've watched a lot of them. Quigley Down Under, really, really good. Crossfire Trail was really good. Anything by Louis L'Amour. All the Sackets was really, really good. Enjoyed the Sackets. Dawn Riders. I'd have to really sit and think about that, because Dances with Wolves would be, if you had to say one, it'd be Dances with Wolves. But it'd probably any of the above, And Unconquered was a really good one, too. I love some of the funny lines in it, and with John Wayne. So there's a lot of good movies out there. And of course, Josie Wales. You gotta have Josie Wales. And that was based on the book Gone to Texas, GTT. Wild Butch is good too. The Mountain Men. In The Mountain Men. And of course, Jeremiah Johnson. But in The Mountain Men, whenever Charlton Heston is looking down the sights and Brian Keith is right there and he pulls the trigger and it flashes him in the face, I would have punched whoever was the technical director on that thing, letting me look down a flintlock like that. That you can tell Brian Keith and them actors did not understand. It was shot, part of it was shot at the Eastern Rendezvous in 1980. And whoever let Brian Keith look down the flash hole of a flintlock, it's a miracle he didn't get blinded by that. Another thing in that movie of The Mountain Man is whenever Heavy Eagle goes in there with Running Moon and he grabs that breech clout and rips that breech clout off. That was 6 feet of wool that went flying past something at high speed. Yeah, let's see how this performance goes now. But that's all we're saying about that. Tombstone, another good one. Last of the Mohicans, real good movie. Mad Trapper, yeah. Charles, I have seen that done and putting the knee highs and stuff down there to try to keep them from crawling up on you. I have seen it done. But to be honest, I have not, like I said, down here in my south, ticks like to drop off of stuff, and chiggers and stuff are going to find their way through it. So, Vicks Vapor Rub is the best thing I can tell you for chiggers. Just coat your ankles and stuff at the top of your socks. They don't like that camphor. And then reapply it every couple of hours. And it seems to work really good. At least for me, it does. Yeah, Bear, I forgot about open range. Oh, what was that movie? Golly, I can see it in my head. Golly, just say. It comes to me at one of the westerns I used to just love when I was a kid. The Great Scout and Cathouse Thursday. Lee Marvin. There's a funny western for you. High Plains Drifter. Pale Rider. Pale Rider's great movie. You know, and Clint Eastwood finally admitted that High Plains Drifter and Pale Rider is the same spirit. That's a ghost both times. That the character you see, a preacher, and the drifter that comes in are both the same character. He says the same ghost coming down from the mountains to seek vengeance. Paint Your Wagon. Good, funny western. Love it. Especially when the preacher falls into the hole and says, "Well, I'll be God." And Lee Marvin says, "Welcome to hell. Have a drink." You know. Oh yeah, Lee Marvin had a sense of laughter that just gets me. Support your local sheriff. There's a good one. All the Trinity series, yeah. Seven Mules for Sister Sarah. That was good. Of course, yeah, you're right. The Wild Bunch. Okay, Town, you opened up the door. Yeah, we all love these ones. Oh, yeah, Blazing Saddles. They couldn't make that movie today at gunpoint. Sons of Katie Elder, yeah. 100 Rifles. Once Upon a Time in the West. You're right, Chuck. Two Mules for Sister Sarah. Joe Kidd. Oh, what was that one? Aces and Eights. The Cheyenne Social Club with Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda. Chateau's Land. That was a really good one, too. The Deserter. First time I ever saw Richard Crenna was in The Deserter. Winchester 73, Man Called Horse, Magnificent Seven. Yep, Silverado. Centennial. Loved the Pasquinel parts of it. Yeah, it kind of got dry for me after a while. By the time you got Dennis Weaver and the cattle drives in, it just, you know, John Wayne, the Cowboys. That was a good one. Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Yep. Both True Grits. Fill Your Hand. Yep. You know, that back in my day, we looked forward to that. When you found out there was a new John Wayne movie or a new Western coming, you know, that was about as violent as we wanted to watch was a Western. And you go to the local movie theater, and that was the shoot 'em up movie, was the westerns. And you'd have the big gunfights and etc. And it wasn't terrible bad. You didn't see a lot of blood, and that was about as violent as you could see. And then in the 70s, you started getting the gangster and the mafia movies, and then you had like Godfather and stuff like that, and that was violent for its day. And movies like that started coming in, and the genre changed, I guess you could say. Lonely Wolf Outdoors. No, I do not. To be honest, I got rid of my TV in 2013. I watch things on YouTube now, and I do stuff like that. And to be honest, I haven't missed a thing. And so I'll have people, oh, do you watch such and such? I don't have a TV. Unless it pops up on something on YouTube, I'll watch little pieces of it. But I haven't watched The Alone or The Survivors or any of that stuff. And I feel bad about it because I was at one of the Pathfinders, and this guy came up and talked to me quite a bit, and just talking, one woodsman to another. After they left, somebody had told me how he'd been somebody on the Alone TV show, and I had never seen it. I've seen pieces of it, but I've never watched the show, So I really didn't know who he was. So. 310 to Yuma. Yes, I like the twist ending to that one. Favorite grain bullet and powder load for muzzleloader pistol, and do you have a preference for 777, Pyrex, or 3F? I've used Pyrex the most, and it's usually my go-to. I do have 3F GoX, and I shoot it a little more sparingly because right now they haven't got back into production, and I can get Pyrex. So on most of my stuff for plinking, I would say about a 20 grain charge in the 36s and a 30 to 35 grain charge in the 44s for round ball. And then I may reduce that slightly if I'm going to put in a conical. But for most of my general purpose shooting, it's going to be round ball, and it's going to be somewhere around there. Each gun's got its own little thing, and I've got it marked down. Like I know my 1860 likes a 33 grain 3F and 35 grains of Pyrex. I know what that is. And so I adjust it. In my pocket Navy, it likes 17 grains of Pyrex the best and gets the best group. But it's just, what am I doing? If I'm just punching holes in paper, why am I wasting a whole lot of powder? Give me an accurate load, and I don't worry about power. If I'm hunting, I want the most power I can get because it's going to be a close shot anyway. I'll let my groups grow a little bit as long as I got more hit. See, it's just the way I think. Hateful Eight, Tarantino, yep. And Django, Django, good movie. And I've got to give the actor, he handled the 51 Navy and the Colts and everything well. Very believable, as far as a fantasy movie, you know what I mean? But he was confident with the guns, and that is not always true in a lot of these shows where you'll see it. And I've seen quite a few Westerns where it's a country singer or something, and he's in a Western, and he's holding a 51 Navy out there. He's holding a single action army like he's holding a dead squirrel. You can tell he's never shot one of these things in real life. He does not know how to hold it or balance it. So it's one of those things. But I digress. Well, guys, that's 1 hour and 50 minutes. We finally got back on. And I greatly appreciate y'all sticking with me. Again, I don't know what happened. It's just all at once, I think internet went out or whatever, and dip, and it brought me up to a completely different screen I have never seen on this, this live on studio, and it was asking me to put in stuff I had no clue, and I just had to hunt and peck till I got it back to this. So, Chuck Miller, yeah, he was doing an homage there back to The Good and the Bad and the Ugly when Tuco was putting the gun together. That's when John Wick did that. I will do my best next week to have a stack of books and go over a reading list, and we'll talk about bushcraft, woodscraft, titles, and stuff like that. So till then, guys, thank you very much for all the support and dropping in, and there'll be more videos coming on the channel very soon. And thank you all so very much for your support. I really, really do appreciate it. So y'all have a good night, sleep well, and I hope to see you next time.